Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett, and today I'm going to be doing a Q&A video, and I'm going to have a timestamp right here for anyone who wants to skip ahead to when I get into better hard drives, better RAM, and all that stuff, and tips on that to help you out when you're trying to upgrade your computer but keep the same thing. But as far as this goes, let's jump on into the question. Question basically goes into the person who's trying to run Cain and Abel. This is a network security tool. It's a hacking tool or a white hat tool, depending on how you're using it. But anyways, the person says that my MAC address is on the thing, shows up fairly quickly within a few seconds. And I'm not sure if they're saying, but because it's poor wording. Keep in mind that it's an international channel and not everybody uses proper grammar. Can use proper grammar because you're not taught English as first language or even a second language. But you have the person either saying that the stuff is taking too long or it's not showing up at all. So let's jump into it not showing up at all. Well, what you need to do is simply look at your firewall settings and also make sure any other software, mostly antivirus stuff like that, are not blocking Cain and Abel from working. Simply that. And also make sure it has the proper permissions and stuff like that. But the thing is where my stuff shows up like from 1 second to the next. Remember, I got the ability to do video editing, and it looks like things are happening like that, but really it can happen like 10 minutes. I am not reviewing that particular video because I got quite a few videos on Cain and Abel. But with that being in mind, I don't think I edited that video on the top of my head. But anyways, as far as that goes, saying it is showing up but is taking a long time, you might have a resource problem. Now, as far as this goes, let's get into what you should do to figure out what the problem is. Windows, specifically any version of Windows, really, go to Task Manager, and yours is probably going to look like something like that. Just go to more details, and what you want to do is go to performance and look at the following. So basically the CPU memory, CPU's processing memory is the RAM, and you have this right there, and you have the Wi-Fi cards, where I got multiple Wi-Fi cards on this machine for reasons. So with this being notes, if it gets into the a stable or some semi-stable state of maybe, I don't know, 70% or more, then you might want to take a look at what's causing the problem. But if it's not at 70% or more, then basically the program itself, like I said, for example, that Cain and Abel, it might be the Wi-Fi card if both the processing and memory is not getting into the 70% or more, then or the disk drive, it's that for that program it shouldn't be the disk drive, but let's just say for hypothetical reasons it would use that. If that gets into the transfer rate, as far as it's bogging that down, you might want to take a look into replacing those. But more than likely, if it's not that, then it's probably something else like the Wi-Fi card or the Ethernet card or whatever it may be. Now, as far as that goes, what happens if it is in the 70% or more? Or what happens if you do see it in the 70% or more at certain times? This is fairly important. So, for example, if you're using something like Adobe Premiere, or you're playing some very advanced games or something of this nature, like where I'm recording and it's getting to almost into 50%, it's kind of normal because that's on what's called a heavy load. So, for example, with Adobe Premiere, when you're rendering, that's supposed to be known as one of the most resource-intensive programs out there, but it uses more on the GPU side. But like, say for example, some game or some other program like CAD or something like that, you might see some spikes and might see it stable off at around 90 or something. Like when I render this in Camtasia, I will easily see this go into 90%. because it's using up all the resources I'm allowing it. Keep in mind that the resources that you're giving it, you want it to be able to use up as much as possible when is needed. And the reason for that is, like, say for example, if it's always only going to be able to use up 50% of the resources, then whatever I bought 50% after that, it's just a waste of money. It might as well be going into the burn barrel. So with that in mind, you don't want it to be near 100% at normal idle times, but you would want it to be getting there just about or just there at heavy load times, and just heavy load times. That's it. But given that it's a normal idle time, what should you do if you do see it above that? See if any processes is bogged down the system. Notes that you got a CPU, memory, and whatever. So what you need to do is basically go through here and see what you need and don't need. And like, for example, if you got some games running in the background, whatever, that you didn't realize, well, that might have caused it. So just shut that down and see if that helps. And just go by that path. But for the most part, again, if you're not above certain points, like 70%, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You can also go in details and whatever and go through that and fix that. One thing I'll also advise to do while you're in here is go through the actual the startup and see if something in here can go down. Now, as far as this goes, let's say that you went through all your processes and everything that's up is need to be up. Like yes, you can shut something down, but you need to have it up either for work or school or whatever. It doesn't matter. What next? Well, again, you have a few options. You can replace a processor, which again, CPU. You can replace RAM, which is again memory. You can replace a hard drive. You can replace the graphics, which is a GPU, and possibly in some scenarios some Wi-Fi card or Ethernet support. Now, with this in mind, you're going to need to know your make and model of your device. The reason for this is you need to know how easy it is to change out things. The easiest thing that should be that you should be able to change out on any computer, and this is including Macs, is RAM. And unfortunately, on some laptops, Windows, Linux, and even Macs, you got to take out the keyboard itself. Literally, where the keyboard is, you got to take that part off in order to get to the RAM. You can't go by the underside or anything like that. And they got so backwards on those models, and it does happen. So you got to make sure that, okay, how easy it is for me to even get to it, because you might end up finding that I'm just going to deal with it because I can't get to it that easily, and I would have to take it to a expert to put this stuff in there, to put the RAM or change out the graphics or do whatever it may be. Now, with that being said, not all models are like that, and more than not, what you're going to find your problems are going to be in is into laptops and also for slim model desktops. I highly advise against getting any slim model desktop. I personally had them, and I had nothing but trouble with overheating and other problems. They're just junk coming out the door. So with that being in mind, normal desktops, they tend to be fairly easy to put things in and whatnot. So with this in mind, because, you know, obviously a laptop and mini computers and stuff like that, they are smaller in size. You're going to have small and larger RAM sticks. You're going to have small and large graphic areas, small and large, whatever. I'm not using the proper terms because it's not necessary, but basically you need to note that if you're going to buy, say for example, I don't know, a RAM stick or maybe a graphics card or something like that, will it even fit into the computer? Like, for example, with my desktop, I got a 970 graphics card, and that barely fits in my computer, and I got a normal size desktop. So with that, that's something to keep in mind, is will it even fit into the thing? Now, there's other things you got to keep in mind, but that's form factor is a major thing. But what you need to do is look at what you have. So one thing I like about Windows 10 is it and you don't have to go through a command prompt. Like, you can go through command prompt by right-clicking the start menu, go to system, and then system again to get the same information. But you can go to the task manager and just get it from here. So like right here, I have for the CPU is a Intel Core i7 and yada yada. So with this, one of the least changed items on a computer is the processor. That's rarely, if ever, changed. Normally, if I ever have to change them, I just buy a new computer altogether. Usually, this is around $200-300 easily. And on top of that, I've kind of screwed myself once. I've actually. And this is, keep in mind, I do video editing and I deal with CAD. Back in the day, I dealt with CAD more often, and so on, so on. And what I found is going from like an i5 to an i7, I'm not seeing any difference at all. So yeah, that's something you got to keep in mind is if you got like an i7 or if you got an i5, you don't need to upgrade to i7 if you already have an i5. If you have an i3, I still would say stick with an i3. I mean, it's on low end. You might run into some problems here and then, like very long stretches. You might find a problem, but for the most part, you're gonna be good with i3 in my opinion. It's just anything below that. That's when you start looking into maybe upgrading. Notes: you need to make sure the stuff goes well with your computer. And changing out a processor, it's a complete pain. That's another reason why I've advised against it. Is it's just a complete pain to install a processor. Some processors are a lot easier to install, but some of them you got to line up the pins exactly. One bent pin can be it for the card. I mean, like, there's that type of problems, and you got to understand thermal paste and all that stuff. And it's a good teach as far as if you want to learn about that stuff. It's good, but for the most part, it's from my perspective, dealing with computers for a long time now, I can tell you it's not really worth upgrading. Just upgrade the entire computer when it comes to that. More than likely, you got more problems going on by the time it's time to upgrade that. So from here, RAM or memory. RAM is some people are probably going to find 4 gigabytes of RAM on their computer. And look at the DDR. So like the DDR2, DDR3, these are different RAM sticks. Just make sure that whatever you put in there is compatible with your computer. Look at the make and model, and that'll tell you what type of RAM is available for your computer. In fact, that's what I had to do with my current computer, is I'm just looking at the make and model and go by that route. So as far as this computer, I got 16 gigabytes of RAM. My past computer had 32 gigabytes of RAM. And what I found is what I do with video editing, with things of that nature, is 16 gigabytes is more than enough. 8 gigabytes is actually really good. But as you see here, I'm using up about 50% ish, and just doing, just screwing around. So 16 gigabytes is more than enough. From my perspective. And I had 32 gigabytes, and you can actually run into the problem where your computer has too much RAM, and the computer just doesn't know how to work with it. But usually that's within the hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, and that's usually more on a server line. But I think Alliance Tech Tips done a video in the past on that. But those are such a, I mean, you basically got to know what you're doing in order to put that much into your computer. Usually you're going to be limited. So for this one, I had only 2 slots into the computer. My last one, I had 4 slots, so I was able to put 32 in my last. Well, the thing is you're probably going to be limited like that, where you might only have 2 slots. But one thing I'll tell you is, if you're switching out from one computer to the next, keep your RAM, given that it is worthwhile. So you can actually go and buy a pre-built computer, a brand new pre-built computer, skip out the RAM. So as long as, say for example, these RAM cards, RAM sticks will fit into the next computer I get, if it's pre-built, I can actually skip out on that stuff. I say get 4 gigabytes of RAM, throw the 4 gigabytes out, or maybe if it has extra slots, then keep them in, and then put this in there. But I can actually use these sticks and put them into the new computer. I highly advise, and I'm highly for camalism, specifically camalism with machines. You can actually take parts from one machine, a car, a computer, or whatever it may be, and given that the part is good, you can use it into another, and it should just run just as good. So just note that. And yeah, these things can go bad over time, but we're talking about a serious amount of time, and you're probably not going to face that yourself. So hard drive, again, you can look up that if you want to know what I'm running. So here's what your options is. You have mechanical hard drives, and you have solid state. So with solid state, you have a plus with it being faster. All solid state drives are faster, and this is a major thing. So say for example, with this case, is the problem is the read and write of the hard drive, and it's mechanical hard drive. By just simply upgrading it to a solid state drive, I will get a huge boost in performance. Not only that, major thing to note is that you can actually do a bit more with a solid state, like with a mechanical hard drive. If you put it on something like a boat or something that moves a lot, or airplane or whatever it may be, you can run some problems where, because it's mechanical or solid state, there is no movement part, so you can't have something that goes out of whack. Now there's pros and cons to both. Pros with mechanical hard drives is you can reuse them, and they can be used for a very, very long time. But the problem is they are much slower, and that's just about it, in my opinion. With solid state drives, they're much faster, but they have a limited amount of writes. So what does write mean? You got to read and write, where you're reading from the hard drive, or in this case solid state, and you're writing to. So it has a limited amount of times it can be written to, and then once it goes out, it goes out. With a hard drive, mechanical hard drive, you tend to get some whining or something. Sometimes that goes out all of a sudden, but you tend to get something, you can hear something's up, where a solid state, there is no warning on that, unless you have like some software on the computer that will alert you with the writes and stuff. Now, as far as the writes, the thing to note with that is usually you can get around with the writes about 10 years. Average person will find that they can actually use the same solid state drive for about 10 years, 5 to 10 years in most cases, depending on the quality. And And as far as this goes, this is obviously meaning don't buy a used solid state drive. In fact, what I'll say is don't buy a used hard drive at all. You can buy used RAM, fine, but do not ever buy used solid state or mechanical hard drives. You might have viruses and stuff like that on it, and that's a big reason. But with solid states, if you have to cheap out, especially do not ever buy used solid state drives. The simple reason why is because of the limited amount of writes. Because you don't know if the person tried to defrag their computer and they used up a crap ton of their writes. So with that being said, is you're going to have to watch out for that. Now, what a lot of people do to get around this, and you might notice that I have a solid state on here, but I'm running mechanical hard drives. So like with all my main ones, I'm running mechanical hard drives, and then I got a solid state. The solid state is used for caching. It speeds things up. It came with the computer. But with that in mind, this I found it to be kind of it's not worth it to me. But if you can get it for little or nothing, then do it like I did. But what a lot of people do is, what they'll do is put a solid state drive in their computer and mechanical hard drives. The mechanical hard drives will be for day-to-day stuff, games, stuff like that. The solid state drive, the only thing stored on a solid state drive is system operation stuff. So like Windows and then things of this nature with Windows. Or like Linux or whatever it may be, but system operation stuff. The reason why is the your day-to-day, you can move things back and forth if you know how to do it right. But the day-to-day stuff, you don't have to worry about the writes right there. And then especially with something like games and stuff like that, where there's a ton of writes to it. What the fact is you really don't have to worry about that. Now, what some people do, they do the reverse, where they put only games on solid state drives and then everything else on a mechanical hard drive. I'll advise doing one or the other, and that way you can actually massively increase the time of your solid state drive. But the biggest thing to note is it's got that. Now, this probably is a legitimate question that's may come up in someone's mind. But what about something like SD cards? Because a lot of computers, you can actually hook up SD cards to it. Well, the fact is the problem with SD cards is SD cards are slower than mechanical hard drives. They're also less reliable than mechanical hard drives, less reliable than solid state drives. And mechanical hard drives, but they tend to get corrupted a lot faster. They tend to just not work a lot faster. They're a lot slower, and so on. And basically, and their reason why they're cheap is because of that. It's because they can, be slow and they're not as reliable. They can get away with that, and so just note that. I mean, if you want something a little bit more reliable, you can look for it in the SD cards, and the price is going to go up. But even if you look at the prices between the actual hard drives, being mechanical or solid state, and the SD cards, once you get into the reliability is about the same as a normal hard drive, you're going to find that the price is actually more than a hard drive itself. So you'd be better off just buying a hard drive. Now, one thing you can do is you can have external hard drives, and the external hard drives will hook up through your USB or whatever ports you have. Note with this is you will the read and write speeds are going to be slowed down to whatever the USB port can put out. So just note that. It's a really good. I had that for a while. It's a really good thing to back up your computer with. But as far as that goes, you're going to be slowed down to whatever your the USB port can deal with. So if it's a regular USB versus 2.0, 3.0, or USB-C or whatever, that's going to be massively differ on the transfer speeds. What I'll advise, if you want to go through that last route as far as using an external hard drive, then try to get one that does a USB Type-C. USB Type-C, I can't remember off the top of my head, but USB Type-Cs, they can support, I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think it's around 20, it might be 2 gigabytes or 20 gigabytes, something like that. It's in the gigabytes area, whereas the normal USBs, it's much lower than that. So go with the USB Type-C if you want to go with the external hard drive, even for a backup, because it massively speeds it up. So just note that. So we got into the CPU, memory, and the hard drive. Now what about the GPU? Well, the GPU, like I said on here, I got a 970. I don't really want to pull up my stuff, but I got a 970 on here. What I found is certain programs in this particular disk question that can enable shouldn't be using GPU. It's more on the processing and RAM portion. But stuff like Adobe, depending on the software, it might use more on the GPU heavy than anything else. And you can see what it's using by looking at the resources. But basically, with my computer, I got like a 970, which is a gaming card. So what you need to look at is the amount of RAM space on the GPU itself. And it's simply just looking at that, and also looking at if the GPU is accurate enough for whatever you're doing. So if you're playing games or doing CAD or whatever it may be, you need to make sure that's all good and whatever. Now, as far as things goes, let's say that you're going into the gaming world. Maybe you're just playing a game once in a long while. If you're doing like web design, if you're doing something like not graphic design type of stuff, but if you're doing the actual building the website, building an application, building software, stuff of that nature, coding portion of it, or something to this nature, you don't need a heavy intensive GPU. But once you get into the graphics, like if you're going to be a graphics artist, that's where that starts to matter a little bit more. Then when you get into gaming, it matters a lot more. More 3D you get, more design you get, the more it matters. Now, as far as that goes, what I found is a lot of the console fanboys in gaming world, they will say something like, with computers, you need to upgrade the GPU every 3 to 5 years. This is actually completely false. What I found is it's really more than 10 years or more. This highly depends on what a person is playing. So let's say, for example, if you're playing, let's pull up my Steam thing. Like if you're playing stuff like this, like where I'm doing Ark, Kerbal, Rocket League, stuff like that, then you'll be fine with a lower end GPU. The most dramatic, the reason why I got a 970, believe it or not, is simply for the VR stuff, because I used to have an Oculus Rift, the DK2, and you're required to have a hefty graphics card in order to really use it at all. Otherwise, it will run into some major problems. And I've tried that for the first little bit, and it just didn't work, so I had to get a upgrade. Well, the fact is if it was not for that, then I would still be running a I think it's HD 7000 series AMD, or HD 6000, 5000 something series, a very old, very low end graphics card, because a lot of these games, a lot of them, in even running something like Adobe would be slowed down quite a bit, but running a lot of this other stuff like Camtasia uses more of the RAM and stuff more than the GPU, and a lot of the stuff, it would run perfectly fine on that. Note that I'm not playing anything like Crysis or anything high end like that. Probably the highest end thing I have that's resource intensive is probably Star Citizen. and that's in development. So basically, you'll find more than not, if you're going to want to get into games, you don't need quote unquote a gaming rig. You can actually take a normal PC and just throw in a $20-$40 graphics card into there. And by the way, you can buy new. It's not much of a problem there. You just got to worry with how abused it is. But you can throw a used one if you want, and there you go. Now, what do you need to note when you're upgrading a graphics card? Well, it's several things. First, you're going to need to note, can your computer even handle it as far as the power usage? So, for example, if the thing requires 400 watts to really work, and you're only having, say, 100 watts, it's not going to work. Parts on your computer is going to turn off, just completely turn off. Hopefully it's not fans, but you're going to run some major problems. You want to make sure that your actual power supply can put out enough. Now, if you're on a laptop, you're going to be massively limited on this, so just know that. On a desktop, you're really going to have to worry about power supplies and stuff like that. Oh, and power supplies, do never buy a used power supply. Always buy new, and always buy brand name, because that is the one thing that can catch fire and burn down your entire house, literally. So with that being said, you just need to make sure that the computer can handle it within that fashion. And then the form factor, as I said before, can it even fit into the computer? With this, I barely was able to put the card into the computer. And the thing's about the size of my arm. And keep in mind, I'm about 6 foot, so it's about 3 feet, more or less. Probably less than that, but still, it's a pretty good sized card. And the thing is that barely fit my computer. On my past computer, I could pretty much guarantee it would not have been able to fit at all. So with that, keep in mind form factor and whatever, and make sure you can return the card if need be, because you might end up finding out, oh, it doesn't fit on my computer. Just tell the store, hey, I can't fit in my computer. Can you take it back? And they'll probably say yep, and that'll be that. But just make sure that you know the return policies for them. But other than that, make sure that you have the proper slots and that you actually use it. That's a major thing. Now, as far as that goes, if you got any other questions or anything else, then feel free to leave that in the comment section, or feel free to email me. My email is on the about section of this channel, or feel free to go into the techreviewsandhelp.com site and go to contact us, and that will send me an email, whatever you want to ask. But please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next video. Hope you have a great day.